Good evening, everybody. I am Nate Eaton, coming to you live from Boise, Idaho. Welcome to Courtroom Insider. I'm a little late. I apologize for that. Putting some last-minute audio together that we just got in from the courthouse from today's testimony. Thank you for being here. We made it. I'm acting like today is Friday because the judge announced that everything is running ahead of schedule with the witnesses. They're going through them much quicker than originally planned, so there will be no court tomorrow, so that things can kind of get shuffled around. He did say that doesn't mean the trial will necessarily end earlier than projected. It's just that tomorrow is going to be a down day, give the attorneys time to prep for Monday or whatever. So there's no court tomorrow, and I'm sorry, that means I won't be here. I'm going to go home. It's our anniversary this weekend, 12 years Erica and I have been married. So April's an eventful month for us. We had Easter, my birthday, the anniversary. Good news, though, Erica will be coming with me to the trial one day next week. So for all of you who have been so polite at the courthouse to introduce yourself to me, you can introduce yourself to her. We have a big day today. We had 8 witnesses on the stand. I don't think there has been a day where we've had that many before. In the past, it's been 6. That's been the top. But they were really buzzing through these witnesses, trying to get enough or as much testimony in as they could. And we're going to talk about it all tonight. And for some reason, my screen just went out. So there must be some short in this system. So I'm going to restart this computer while I tell you exactly what happened today. So the first thing that we went through, we heard from another Chandler police detective. You may remember that yesterday we heard from the Chandler Fire Department, a firefighter from the Chandler Fire Department. We heard from a couple of other detectives from Arizona who came up. And I will say that Jim Archibald has been very vocal in opposing these witnesses, in objecting to having them testify. He argues that the crimes in Arizona, Lori Vallow is not being charged here in Idaho for those crimes. Therefore, the crimes in Arizona should not be brought up in Idaho. A lot of this is likely for appeal purposes, because if he didn't, there could be questions about that. Why are they bringing up crimes in another state when she's not facing charges here for those crimes? But the judge said there was apparently a hearing back in February. It was closed because we weren't able to go to that, where this issue was discussed. The judge acknowledges every time Jim Archibald objects to the Arizona witnesses, and then he lets the testimony continue. So on most of those witnesses, the defense is not cross-examining. There are a few times, and today was one where Archibald will get up and ask a couple of clarifying questions or whatnot. But for the most part, they're just kind of letting the defense do their questioning. We did hear more cross-examination today from Jim Archibald than we have heard in a while. In fact, and that was with David Warwick, who is Melanie Gibbs' husband. He took the stand today. We also heard from the principal of JJ's school in Rexburg at Kennedy Elementary. There we go. We got the graphics. Yay. And you got a little bit of me with some music. Here's what we're going to talk about. It's day 13. So the witnesses that took the stand, as I mentioned here, we have the principal of Kennedy Elementary. We have the nanny who watched JJ for one day in Rexburg. She went onto an app. She was a BYU Idaho student. She was looking for work and found an app, and Lori Vallow at the time applied. And this woman, her name is Sydney, applied to watch JJ, and she actually met with Lori and watched JJ for one day. She took the stand. We had the dean of BYU Idaho. He was on the stand for maybe 5 minutes. We had David Warwick talking about dreams and visions. We had an FBI analysis of some evidence that was seized from Chad Daybell's house. We had police detail the initial search and call for JJ. We had body camera footage. I'm going to play you the audio. They haven't released the video, but I'll play you the audio. This was the very first time police had contact with Lori Vallow in Idaho. It's when they have initially got that call that JJ was missing, but we now know that police for weeks knew that the Jeep connected to the shooting of Brandon in Arizona. The Jeep was in Rexburg, and police had been watching for that Jeep for weeks and following Chad and Lori. So they knew a whole lot more than they let on when they went to talk to Lori, and they were wearing body cameras 2 times. They went there, and then they went back a 3rd time with a camera to search the house. We want to remember JJ, Tylee, Charles, and Tammy today. And as I mentioned, no court tomorrow. So let's jump right in. Here are the sketches we have on the left. That is Detective Nathan Moffat from the Chandler Police Department. Yes, there is a Nathan Duncan and a Nathan Moffat. It's kind of like our newsroom. We have a Nate Eaton and a Nate Sunderland, and there's never any confusion with that. Actually, anytime anybody complains about me, I just say, oh, that was the other Nate. Talk to him. Just kidding. Here's Moffat, and then on the right we have Sydney Shank. She was the nanny who shared her testimony. We also have this photo or this sketch of David Warwick, and then this one also of David Warwick. He was on the stand probably for the longest time out of anybody today. We have Detective Mattingly with the Fremont County Sheriff's Office. He was on the stand for a short time. This is a picture of Benjamin Dean. He's an FBI intelligence analyst who analyzed the digital evidence that was taken from Chad's house. And then we had Rexburg Police Detective Sergeant David Stubbs, who was wearing that body camera footage when they went to Lori's house, and he followed Chad and Lori to Idaho Falls, got a picture of them holding hands, all sorts of stuff on there, and we'll play some of that. So let me buzz through real quick some of this testimony because there's a lot to get in. I'm just giving you the bullet points kind of each witness, and then if you want to go listen to their testimony, you can. I just uploaded, which is one of the reasons I'm a little late today, part 1 and part 2 of the audio, so it's up. So don't go now, but when we're done, if you want to listen to it, total time today was about 4.5 hours. So Nathan Moffat took the stand. He said that he was one of the first detectives to respond the day that Alex shot Charles. And he said that Alex said that Charles was chasing Lori around the house, yelling at her because she wouldn't give him the phone. Tylee came out with a baseball bat. He said Charles took away the bat and hit Alex in the head. But one of the interesting things that the sergeant said is that the injury on Alex's head was not consistent with the type of injury someone would have if an athlete hit you in the back of the head with a bat. You would probably be knocked out. But Alex had a little bit of blood, and that was it. He didn't have like a dent or a goose egg, no concussion, just a little bit of blood. Again, Charles, you've seen pictures of him. He's a built guy. He could have easily taken, and he was an athlete in college. He played baseball. He could have easily taken that bat, and if there was any sort of issue where he felt his life was in danger, he could have swung it at Alex. Alex told the detective he went in the back bedroom because he was worried for his life. He got his gun. He shot Charles, and then he did CPR. That's what he said. There was no sign that he did CPR, but that's what he said. But what was interesting is that the sergeant said it was the ride to the police station and from the police station that was, he said, quote, bizarre. They went to the police station, and while Lori was being interviewed by a detective, Detective Sergeant Moffat was interviewing Alex. And he said that they would take a break in the interview, and after the interview, he would go and he would talk with the detective who was interviewing Lori, and the stories didn't match. For instance, Lori told her detective that she had asked Alex to come over the night before because she was worried for her safety. She was worried what Charles was going to do to her. Alex, when asked, didn't say that that's why he was over there. He didn't mention that his sister had called him over to spend the night. That's a red flag. And then after they all got in a minivan, Lori and Tylee and Alex and the 2 detectives, and they drove back to the scene, the house, and he said that was the bizarre car ride. There was no sadness. There was no worry, no distraught. It was if they were going to lunch, going to the grocery store, going to the mall. Just, all right, Charles. I don't even know if they talked about Charles. He just said it was really, really bizarre. So he testified. Next, we had the babysitter, Sydney Shank, the nanny. as I said, she put an ad out. She was attending BYU Idaho. She put an ad that she wanted some babysitting jobs, side jobs. Lori responded. They started texting. She went over to Lori's house. Lori explained that JJ had special needs and that he needed, kind of individualized care, perhaps more than another child might be. Sydney said, I'm fine. I'm up for the task. And I believe it was the very next day she came back for her first job. Lori said she had to go pick up a friend from the airport. So Sydney stayed there with JJ. Lori left. They had a good time, and then JJ started playing with a friend outside, and they got into a dispute over who could play with what toys. And she ended up calling JJ back in the house because things were getting out of hand, and JJ was really upset for the rest of the night, just really upset. So she had him go to his room to play with his toys. He still didn't calm down. Lori got back later. But Lori, before she left, said, if I'm late, you can give him some of this medicine, which will help him go to sleep. Well, Lori got back with Alex and Melanie Gibb. So remember, this is like that weekend that JJ was last seen alive. So this was close to that time. So she paid the sitter in cash, Lori did, and she went home. And then Lori had told the sitter that she might need help later that week or within a few days. I don't remember the exact wording. And so the sitter followed up with Lori, and Lori responded, oh, JJ has gone to stay with his grandma in Louisiana for a month, so we won't need your services. And the babysitter thought, oh, that was a little odd. She just hired me like 2 days ago, but whatever. So then about a month later, Sydney followed up with Lori and said, hey, do you need any help? And Lori never responded. So she testified of that. By the way, if you have questions, put them below in the comments if you're watching on YouTube or on Facebook, and I'm going to answer some of your questions. I forgot to say that at the beginning. And let me know where you're watching from too, because I love to read those. All right, so her testimony was pretty short. The third witness was Josh Wilson. He's the principal at Kennedy Elementary. He said that JJ was officially enrolled at the school from September 3rd to September 24th of 2019. He was last physically present on the 20th. I'm going to pull up my calendar and see what day of the week that was. This was back in 2019. In 2019, the 20th was Friday. Police believe JJ died the 22nd or the 23rd, Sunday night into Monday. And then on the 24th, that Tuesday, Lori called the school and said that JJ would be moving to another state. I don't remember which state, but she basically said he's going to a special school. And so the principal, she emailed the school on the 24th and said, we're moving to another school that has more specialized care for his needs. The principal then called Lori and said, okay, what's the name of the school? We'll transfer his records. Lori said, well, actually, a cousin who knows how to deal with JJ's behavioral issues, a cousin is going to watch JJ. So he's going to be homeschooled, and she's going to teach him. And the principal said, all right, well, we will be the custodian of his records until he re-enrolls in public school. Just let us know when that happens, and we'll send the records wherever we need to. And Lori was fine with that. He was at that school for 20 days. I mean, that includes weekends. So maybe 15, 16 days, and that was it. And it's interesting. You have these witnesses. As I said the other night, we've known a lot about this for 4 years almost. We've been hearing bits and pieces here and there. And you hear something and then you forget it. Or you might think, did I hear that? Is it true? But now you've had 2 weeks of witness after witness putting together this massive puzzle. And everybody's got a piece of it. And you hear some of these things and you're thinking, what did they not think they would get caught? Or how do you keep track of the alleged lies? I just the fact of You'll hear it in a minute when the police show up at Lori's house on the body cam footage, and Lori has her arms crossed and she's telling them these things that now we look back and think, oh man, just it seems to be lie after lie after lie. And apparently she lied to the principal at Kennedy Elementary and said JJ would be getting homeschooled. The next witness was Wynn Hill. He's the dean at BYU, Idaho. He was pretty short. He was basically asked, do you have any record of Tylee Ryan applying to your school? He said no. Do you have any record of her being a student? No. No record at all. Not only did they check Tylee Ryan, they checked Lori Vallow, Tylee Vallow. They checked a few different names and nothing came up associated with her. So again, Lori told more than one person, several people. She actually told the nanny that Tylee was going to BYU, Idaho, living off campus, and that Tylee didn't want to babysit her little brother unless she got paid. So that's why Lori needed to hire a nanny. So those were the first four witnesses, all before 11 today. They went through them quick. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you have David Warwick. I'm going to get a drink. David is married to Melanie Gibb. There was an interesting exchange that has not come up. Well, it kind of came up yesterday with April Raymond. Every witness, when they get on the stand, the judge asks, have you watched any media coverage of this trial or read or heard anybody else's testimony? All of them have said no. All of the witnesses were served a subpoena saying you will be a witness in this trial. Do not watch any coverage associated with the trial. Well, David Warwick said that last week when his wife, Melanie Gibb, or was that this week? I don't remember. All the days blend together. Whenever Melanie Gibb testified, he was not able to come with her to Idaho because he was very sick. She lives in Arizona. He lives in Utah. So she said Melanie was upset with him because she wanted him here, and he was at home sick. And after she testified, he was on YouTube, and he said that up popped either our video or another true crime video. He didn't recall which one, but he did name East Idaho News, full disclosure, and said he watched about 45 minutes of her testimony. And as he was watching it, after about 45 minutes, he realized, oh no, I'm not supposed to do this, and he shut it off. And he also said that he watched or read a former story done about Zulema and Alex. So the defense said he should not be allowed to testify. He broke the subpoena. His testimony could be impacted by his wife's because they're not supposed to discuss it. The prosecution argued that this was a mistake and they specifically asked David Warwick, is your testimony going to change based on what Melanie said? And he said, no, my testimony stays the same. They also said that he immediately told them. He could have, of course, lied and said, I didn't. Well, the defense really was adamant, saying he shouldn't be allowed on. Well, then, so the judge said, all right, there's a couple of things I can do. There's 4 options. 1, I can hold him in contempt of court, which would be a big deal. You could serve jail or pay a fine if you're in contempt of court. The judge said, I don't think it raises to that level. It sounds like it was an accident or an absent-minded something that he did. 2, I don't remember what it was. 3, we can cut his testimony and just not let him in. And then there was another responsibility, which was pretty serious. And he said, I don't think we're going to go there. Basically, he asked David some questions. The defense and the prosecution did. And the judge said, okay, we're going to let him in. We're going to let him testify. Again, the defense opposed and said no. So then Boyce said, here's what we'll do. We'll let him testify. But the defense, by the way, this was all done out of the presence of the jury. Sometimes there are issues the judge sends the jury out. So this was all done out of the presence of the jury. But so Judge Boyce told the defense, when the jurors come back in, you can say to them what happened. This witness is credibility. There's a credibility issue with this witness because he watched his wife testify. But what's interesting is when the jury came back and it was the defense's turn, they didn't say anything about it. And I was sitting next to a reporter from New York, and we looked at each other like, did they forget? Or maybe maybe it's a written thing that when the jury goes back to deliberate, they get something in writing. I'm not really sure why the defense did it, or maybe they just forgot. So anyway, bottom line is it was an interesting exchange to hear, and it would have been interesting had the judge said, you're out, you can't testify. But they didn't. They let him testify, and boy, oh boy, did he testify. David Warwick was the last person, one of the last people to see JJ alive. He was at Melanie Gibbs' house. He was with Melanie Gibb at Lori Vallow's house and that weekend, and he came up for a few reasons: to record a podcast, to see his son in Pocatello, and to go to a Book of Mormon conference, not sponsored by the church, just some conference. He stayed in one room in Lori's house. Melanie stayed in the other. He said that night he had a horrible, horrible nightmare. And Melanie was there and said, let me get Lori to call Chad over to give you a blessing. Lori's door was locked. JJ was staying in her room because Melanie was in one room and David was in the other. The door was locked and nobody responded to Melanie's texts. The next morning, David woke up and said something about where's JJ. Now, David mentioned that he has a son who has autism and Down syndrome. And because JJ had special needs, he kind of had a bond with him. So when he arrived at the house, JJ was playing with like a box, and he had cut out holes in the box and was like turning it into a house, like a little house that you play with. So David sat on the floor and tried to play with JJ, but no response. JJ was focused on this house. So the next morning, David wakes up after this horrible nightmare and says to Lori, where's JJ? I want to say goodbye. And she says JJ was misbehaving. I had to send him with Alex. Away with Alex. She said that he climbed up on the counter and he climbed up on the cabinets in the fridge and he knocked down her picture of Jesus. And David looked at the counter and the cabinets and he looked at the fridge and there was no scuff marks. There was no sign of that. That, if you're going to climb on a stainless steel fridge, which she said he had, there'd be a shoe print or a footprint or something. He said there was none of that. And he said he just didn't feel right, but he didn't really know what to do. He didn't call the police. He admitted that, but he said it had been a weird weekend anyway, because Chad was over there telling him about the 144,000 and how Chad's the leader of the 144 and David's part of this group. And there was going to be this call out. And David said, no, Chad, I don't believe that. I think if that is going to happen, he believes the prophet of the LDS church would do that, would decide who's going to lead or whatnot. And David said, well, this is the church, or Chad told him, this is the church of the firstborn, a new church growing out of the LDS church. He said that Chad was trying to convince him to buy a big plot of land right next to a church. And they went out to this land and they got there and they got out of the car, and Chad and Lori are describing this temple that's built on this land, but there wasn't an actual temple. It was a spiritual temple. They said that might one day be there. And then David said he doesn't do business on Sunday. He doesn't work on Sunday, but Chad really wanted him to see this 60-acre plot of land. And David knew a developer who was looking to build in Idaho. So David said, okay, I'll drive by. So they go to drive by the land with Alex, and Chad shows up with a realtor from church. And David said, I don't do business on Sunday. It's like Chad was pushing David to buy this land, to do something with this land. So he said that, and he had also heard about the teachings, these weird teachings that he wasn't real comfortable with. He sounds like it was just an uncertain weekend. So what was interesting is that David, when the defense got up to cross-examine him, they really went after him, you could say, for his visions and dreams. He says he's a visionary. He has dreams. He believes Russia and China will invade America. He believes the third world will come into America. I don't remember all of the details, but the defense really went down the line, I think, trying to paint him as someone who is an extremist with religions, someone who believes he's a visionary, and maybe trying to question his credibility. It was the most assertive, I guess we could say, that we've seen Jim Archibald with a witness in cross-examination as far as questioning him. And I don't know if it made a point. I will tell you that after that testimony, it was a break, and someone came up to me, he might be watching, somebody here in Idaho, and he asked me, do you think after hearing that testimony, do you think the prosecution regrets putting David Warwick on the stand? Which it was interesting that an observer would think that. And I'm not going to comment on that yes or no, but if you go back and listen to the testimony on our YouTube channel, you can see exactly what David said. Okay, we went to lunch. And then after lunch, we heard from Detective Mattingly at the Fremont County Sheriff's Office. He described that search warrant in January of 2020. I have to tell you, I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice. It's the end of the week. I got to get a drink. That the January search warrant, it was the 3rd. I remember I was at a funeral, and we were just coming back from Christmas holidays, and my wife and I were at a funeral, and I got a text that the cops were at Chad Daybell's house. So I texted Eric Grossarth. You guys might remember him if you followed the story. He was interning with us at the time, and I said, can you get up there? And that's the day that they were carrying out electronics and boxes and all journals, all sorts of stuff. So Mattingly testified that the electronic evidence that they took from that house, they took to the sheriff's office in St. Anthony, and then it was taken to the FBI. And the next witness was Ben Dean. He's an FBI intelligence analyst. If you watched Chad Daybell's preliminary hearing, which I would suggest if you're really into this case, go back and watch it. Again, we have that on our YouTube channel, because he testified at the preliminary hearing, and it was kind of the same testimony. But on this time, he talked about some Blu-ray discs that they stored the evidence on. And one of the discs was evidence that they apparently got from Seth Daybell's phone. And the other disc was stuff they got from Tammy Daybell's phone. Her emails, her photos, her texts, everything like that. And one of the texts they found, the infamous raccoon text. So, a few things. Let me read it to you. This is a text sent on September the 9th, I believe, from Chad to Tammy. Tammy was at work. Whoops. Oh, shoot. Okay. I have the same slide in here twice. That was part 2 of the slide. Let me pull up part 1. Here we go. Okay, so Chad sends this to Tammy. Well, I've had an interesting morning. I felt I should burn all of the limb debris by the fire pit before it got too soaked by the coming storms. Okay, so he texts his wife at work and says, I decided to burn all the limb debris that was outside. We have a storm coming, and it's going to get wet, and I'm going to burn the debris. The text continues. Well, I had an interesting morning, felt I should burn the limb debris before it got too soaked by the coming storms. While I did so, I spotted a big raccoon along the fence. I hurried and got my gun, and he was still walking along. I got close enough that one shot did the trick. He is now in our pet cemetery. Fun times. Okay, kind of a weird text, but I don't know how you are with texts. When I text my wife, normally it's 1 or 2 lines. Sometimes it'll be long, but normally I think if I need to do a long text, I'm going to call her. And that's what the detective said it was like with Chad and Lori, or Chad and Tammy. They went through all of Tammy's text, and all of the messages that Chad sent to Tammy were short. What do you want for dinner? I'm going to run to the store. We're out of milk. I'm going to transfer money from this account to this account. Those were normally the texts. Yes, no. Yet there's this one long text to Tammy on this day. And then about a minute or so later, he says, I'm going to go shower and head up to BYU to write. Tammy doesn't respond for a few hours. And when she does, she says, good for you, or something like that. And he responds right away, I'm home. So that text stood out. And here's the interesting thing with Ben Dean, the FBI analyst. He was tasked with the Yellowstone news release. I don't know if you remember. Maybe I do, because I've followed this so closely. We go to Hawaii in March. We approach Chad and Lori in January of 2020. In March, it was the beginning of March. I think it was March 3rd. The FBI sends out a news release and asks anybody who was at Yellowstone National Park on September 7th, 8th, 9th, somewhere around there, to send in photos and video. That was quite a release. You rarely see a release like that. They set up a special site for people to send in their photos and their videos, just in case there were any sightings of Lori and JJ and Tylee and Alex. And there was some thought at the time that those kids could be buried in the park. And there was even thoughts of doing a search up there. Had that happened, this would be a federal case if the bodies would have been found in a national park or thrown in a hot pot. I don't want to be gruesome, but we've covered stories on East Idaho News of people who have fallen in the hot pots and they're never found. They find a shoe. In fact, earlier this year, they found a shoe with a foot inside and no body. So the FBI was looking at this, and Ben Dean, the analyst, was over this. He was over checking the tips that came in and analyzing it. And then he's analyzing the evidence from Chad's and from Tammy's phone, and he realizes, oh wait, these dates match. The same date that we're asking people in Yellowstone to send us photos and video is the same date Chad sent this abnormally long text to his wife about shooting a raccoon and burying them in the yard. And raccoons are nocturnal animals. Why would one be out in the day? Interesting timing. So Benjamin Dean talked about that. And then we ended the day with Detective Sergeant David Stubbs. So he works for the Rexburg Police Department. And he talked about how they got the call in early November of 2019 from the Fremont County Sheriff's Office saying that Chandler police were looking for a Jeep that was used in a possible attempted homicide. Could they swing by and look at the apartment associated with this? They go over to the apartment. They don't see the Jeep, but a bunch of cops kind of stake out the place. And pretty soon they see Chad and Lori. And they see Chad and Lori getting into a blue Subaru, and they drive to Idaho Falls, and the cops are following them. They get to Idaho Falls, they stop at a credit union, they then go to Hobby Lobby, and Detective Stubbs got a picture of Chad and Lori entering Hobby Lobby. Chad was in a blue shirt, Lori was in a sweatshirt, they were holding hands, her head was on Chad's shoulder, kind of resting on it. So they had this evidence early November. They eventually found the Jeep. They seized the Jeep. No one ever called the police department to report their Jeep was gone. If your car was seized, don't you think you'd want it back? No one ever called. And the police couldn't get a hold of the car owner. It was registered to Tylee Ryan and Joseph Ryan, according to Stubbs. Well, of course they couldn't get a hold of those two because they were dead. Well, then 3 weeks later, and at this point, they didn't even really know about JJ. I mean, of course, this is all brand new. They're like, what? What are these names? A few weeks later, right around Thanksgiving, Kay Woodcock requests the welfare check on JJ. So they go over to the house. Chad and Alex are there. They looked scared. They looked nervous. They said, we're with the police. Where's JJ? Well, we don't know. He's with Lori, or I don't remember everything that happened, what they said. But Chad, they asked Chad, do you have Lori's number? And he said, no. And they're like, you don't have her number? Come on. The police knew that they had been hanging out together. They had surveillance pictures, but they didn't tell them that, obviously. So Chad finally handed over Lori's number. Well, then you remember the other day, Detective Hermosillo said he went over to the prosecutor's office to try to get into Lori's house for a warrant. While he was there, he got word that Detective Stubbs, who testified today, and Detective Hope, I believe, were able to make contact with Lori. So I want to play you what we saw in court. Unfortunately, I can't play you what we saw because I don't have the video, but I have the audio from the video. You're going to have to picture a police body camera here. And Lori opened the door. She's with, Detective Ball is with Detective Stubbs. And Lori opens the door, and most of the conversation, she has her arms folded across her chest, and they're trying to just figure out where JJ is. This was the first of 2 visits to that apartment on that day. Again, I'm sure the police at this point are like, what is happening here? We just want to find this little boy. And at that point, they didn't even know really Tyler was missing again, as I said. You're going to have to listen close. I apologize for the audio. It's because, again, it's playing a video through the court system, and then that's what we're getting. By the way, side note, our Jordan, who I work with at East Idaho News, he took Colby Ryan's jail call with his mom and cleaned it up. He enhanced the audio. He removed the background noise. It's much, much clearer now if you want to go back and listen. And we added captions. So it's on our YouTube page. It's also on my Facebook page if you wanted to get a clearer listening of that. And I might ask him to do that with this too. But for now, this is part 1. It's about 5 minutes. You can hear Lori's voice and her tone and also what the police said. They're knocking on her door.
Hi, Lori. Lori, I'm Lieutenant Ball, Police Department. How are you? You got me? You alone or the help? My brother's here.
She said, my brother's here. They go inside the house.
Where are you?
Yes, I just talked to the guy on the phone.
What did he ask?
He was just saying that he wanted to do a well check on weekend.
So, what would you have to do if you were?
He's in Arizona.
Who's he with in Arizona?
He's with one of my friends in Arizona.
Oh, you got a notepad? No. No. Come here. Mind if he comes in? So,
Alright.
who's the friend he's with?
My friend Melanie. Her son has autism. Her name's Melanie. I gave him all the information.
Okay, so he can call him.
Yeah. What is all this?
We're a little concerned.
Right.
Well, the officers who were here earlier
Yeah.
were checking, and they got a bad vibe. Like something was going on here because nobody knew anything about the child. We were talking.
It's because a lot of stuff that was going on. If you don't want to know, it's a lot of stuff. So,
Well, that's why we're concerned, because it just was kind of weird.
it is very weird. I've had to move around a lot. One of my brothers is trying to kill me. Not the brother that was here. Obviously, he's kind of my protector. My other brother was in with my husband, who was trying to kill me for my $2 million life insurance.
No.
So, a lot of stuff is going on in this last year. It's been a horrible year for us. I've had to move around. And so, I was going to move back to Arizona. But my son back into school there because I tried to bring my school here, public school in Kennedy. He went for 2 months and tried it, but he had his and now the person who called.
Okay, you know what? I think I found a better version. I know that's hard to hear. Stay with me here. I believe I have it from when Detective Stubbs testified at the preliminary hearing for Chad Daybell, and I believe that this audio is much clearer. I don't know if you could hear, though. I'm just looking it up here. Lori says that she is hiding out in Rexburg because her brother is trying to kill her for her $2 million life insurance policy. And Ron Ball says, what? She goes, not this brother, but my other brother, the brother who I'm here with, is my protector. So the police are like, what? Okay, what is this? Okay, here we go. I think that this is going to be much easier. Now, this video is from 2020, and this, you're going to see Chad rather than Lori, but it's the same audio, and it's much clearer. So again, different hearing, same audio that was played today. I hope that makes sense. Here we go.
This is my body cam footage as myself and Lieutenant Ball approach the apartment number 175 the first time on the 26th.
Okay.
Her car's out there too. In the back, it's blue. Blue Subaru.
Hi, you Lori. Lori, I'm Lieutenant Ball, Police Department. How are you? You got a minute? You alone, or that help? Or?
My brother's here.
Okay. This is Detective Stubbs.
Hello.
So, we're here.
Yeah, this is a big mess. I just talked to the guy on the phone.
And what did he ask you?
He was just saying that he wanted to do a well check on JJ.
So, JJ would be where?
He's in Arizona.
Who's he with in Arizona?
He's with one of my friends in Arizona.
Oh.
Hi.
Oh,
Hey.
you got a notepad?
No? Want me to get one?
No. Come here. You mind if he comes in?
No, come on.
So,
Thank you.
Sorry.
who's the friend he's with?
My friend Melanie. Her son
Melanie.
has autism. Her name is Melanie Gibb. I gave him all the information on the phone.
Okay, so he can call him?
Yeah.
Or-
Discord.
Yeah. What is all this?
We're a little
What is
concerned
it? Why?
because, well, the officers who were here earlier
Yeah.
were checking, and they got a bad vibe that like something was going on here because nobody knew anything about a child. They weren't talking.
It's because a
What's
lot of
going
stuff
on?
has gone on. If you want to know, it's a lot of stuff. So
Well, that's why we're concerned, because
very-
it just was kind of weird.
it is very weird. I've had to move around a lot. One of my brothers is trying to kill me. Not the brother that lives here, obviously. He's kind of my protector. My other brother that was in with my husband, who was trying to kill me for my $2 million life insurance policy.
Now,
So a lot of stuff has gone on in this last year. It's been a horrible year for us. I've had to move around. And so I was going to move back to Arizona, put my son back into the school there because I tried to put him in school here, public school at Kennedy.
okay.
He went for 2 months. We tried it, but he had such a hard time. Now, the person who called is my sister-in-law, but she's his natural grandmother. He's adopted by us. Okay, so her son, who's a drug addict,
Okay.
had a baby with a girl who's a drug addict, and they took him from, CPS took him,
Okay.
gave him to the grandmother. She came and got him, and then she wanted us to adopt him, which we did. And we loved
By
him and taken
us,
care.
who we
My
talking?
husband and I, who died earlier this year.
Okay.
He passed away. Since he
Sorry to
passed
hear that.
away, she's been trying to fight me for him and being really horrible to me and that kind of stuff.
The,
She's kind of the paternal friend.
okay, thank
Does
you.
that make sense?
That's
I'm
what I
sorry.
needed. The paternal grandmother.
He has autism and ADHD. He doesn't really talk to people. Like he's very special needs. So I had him in a special needs school there. She was trying to, so what happened was my husband, who we were married for 15 years and had raised all these 5 kids together, switched his life insurance policy to her right?
To.
To his sister,
Okay.
who got $1 million when he died, and we got nothing. For me to raise JJ, and all the kids got nothing, and everybody got nothing. She got $1 million. So I knew she was going to try to sue me for him, or
JJ?
yeah, because she now has this $1 million, so she can hire people to help him, and I have nothing.
But you have legal custody.
He's my son. I adopted him when he was 2 years. We had him from the time he was 8 months old till 2 years old. So she does nothing that wants to cause me trouble. So I don't tell people the truth about where we are and what we're doing because of those reasons. So I look like a suspect, but I am not a good person. Raised all of my kids. I've done everything that I'm supposed to do in life, but everyone is causing me trouble right now. So
We don't want to cause a lot of trouble. How long have you been here?
we've only been here since September.
Okay.
We moved up here in September. My daughter to go to BYUI.
Your daughter goes to BYUI?
Yeah.
Does she live here?
So it's been a nightmare, but I'm going to go back to Arizona so I can put him back in the special needs school. He couldn't do the school here. It was too hard for him. He would scream and cry, take him to school. The principal would have to come out, try to drag him out of the car. Like, it just was too hard. But I just don't tell people where I am. I don't tell her where I am ever.
Okay.
And she doesn't have any legal rights to anything. Like, she's been horrible to me since my husband died.
My understanding, she never called to try to get the child, hey, I'm interested in the child back, but that.
I know, but she sends me these emails with like the date and like she's putting up court stuff, like she's documenting. I haven't heard from him in all this time, and so I've told her that he's fine. But
See, and we hadn't heard any of that as far as,
I'm just saying she's doing this as part of that.
Yeah.
Is my understanding.
and our only concern in this whole thing
Yeah, is that he's fine.
is the child.
I got it.
And so that's where we're at on the, and then
So
we
I
were just a
called
little
her.
weirded out when, and I understand now that we've heard your side of the story.
It's awful. They
Is
just I feel like I'm being tracked all the time. I'm like, why are police coming to my door? What did I do?
They said they were out visiting with two guys, and I'm assuming one's your brother.
Who was this? Yeah.
Who was the other one? The other guy they were visiting with. There were two.
Visiting.
Well, we had two detectives over here trying to,
Looking for you a little while ago.
Oh, because I was at the store.
and they ran into probably one of your brothers in
My
the back
brother
there.
and his friend, probably.
Oh,
They've
who's
been
that?
moving. Chad.
Chad from around here?
Mhm.
What's his last name? Bill. Okay. All right.
So it's just a mess. It's constantly causing me trouble.
Chad the Daybell?
He's an author.
Doesn't he live like out in the? Isn't that the Chad Daybell that? Did his wife pass away recently? Is that him?
I don't know,
I bet it is. Chad the Daybell. Yeah.
but it sounds familiar as an author.
I think I know.
Right.
I think I know one of his. He's got a couple of daughters. Is that
He has lots of kids.
okay. I'll bet it's safe. All right. Well, need anything else? Sorry to bother you.
Thank you.
Okay.
We don't mean to be a
I'm
problem.
sorry
We just-
that people are constantly knocking on my door looking for me, and I just don't want to be found. So
Have you had problems? Because I think we've only had.
the reason I'm moving is because the brother that was going to kill me, that we found emails and texts with my husband at the time, came showing up here. So he found out where I was, and he was knocking on my door.
No, this was your brother?
One of my brothers.
He showed up here and was knocking on your door.
He lives in Kansas.
And you said something about you were getting threatening emails?
Well, no, just after my husband passed, I found emails and texts between them that they were planning all this stuff to get rid of me.
Do we need to worry about him coming over?
Well, that's when I'm moving back. I'm moving, and I'm not going to be in a place. I'm going to live with my friend, Melanie. Don't tell her.
Oh, you can call. I'm gonna take care of it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Just a nightmare. I mean, I canceled the insurance policy since my husband passed, so there's no money if they kill me. And what are they going to do with JJ and Tyler? Like, what do people think?
Okay.
So,
Well, if you have a problem, show us back up, feel free to call us. We'll come and run him off or something. Okay? All right.
appreciate it.
Okay, we'll get out of here. Sorry to bother you.
Thank you.
Okay, so a lot there. The police knew at the time that Lori knew who Chad was. They'd followed them. They had pictures of them. You see, they were obviously playing coy to see what Lori would say. But what was interesting today is that Sergeant Detective Stubbs said that he was really focused, and you can't see the video because I don't have it here, but his camera was focused at the stairwell. Lori was here. He was concerned for officer safety, he said, because he saw at the top of the stairs movement. And it was Alex Cox. And he wondered why Alex wouldn't have come down the stairs, because Alex had dealt with the cops earlier. Think about it. The police show up, they talk to you, they leave, they come back to talk to your sibling. Are you not going to go down and like engage with them and be like, yeah, we talked earlier? He didn't. Instead, there was movement upstairs. We now know that Alex had bought 46 guns during this time period. Who knows what would have happened? Who knows what would have happened? And that's why the police, they knew at that time, they were nervous. Stubbs was concerned about officer safety, and he said that today. They then went back to Lori's later that day because they couldn't get a hold of Melanie Gibb. So they played the second body camera footage, and she knocked on the door, or they knocked on the door. Detective Ball said, Lori, like, oh, come on, open up. She opens the door. They said, we need Melanie Gibb to call Detective Hope because we can't get a hold of them. That's when she said, they're at Frozen 2. And she said, okay, I'll have him call. Now we know she told Melanie, go to the movies, take pictures of random kids, have them call. And then the next video we saw today in court was when they actually went back and served the search warrant, and it was Detective Stubbs walking through the house with a video camera, and we see some Amazon envelopes on the counter, the pantry, the bathrooms, upstairs in the bathroom. There's a towel on the door, but no clothes in the closet, things like that. So interesting testimony. Detective Stubbs will be back on the stand Monday. There's no court tomorrow, so he'll be back on the stand on Monday, and it should be interesting to hear what he has to say. Okay, I want to get to your questions. I'm talking a lot tonight, but want to get it all in here. But before we do that, I want to show you this beautiful picture of Tammy. This was taken right after she passed away, and I was sent this photo from someone who knew her and loved her well, and I want to read you a message that someone sent me about Tammy. It wasn't necessarily in relation to this photo, but this was about her. It says, Tammy always had a smile. I never saw her without a big smile. She loved people, especially children. All of the kids at school loved to go to the library and see her and listen to her stories. She was always positive and uplifting. She was a great listening ear to all. She was always willing to lend a helping hand. She loved her family and loved her grandchildren. She is missed. So we remember Tammy tonight, and JJ and Tylee and Charles Vallow, because they should be remembered. Okay, let me get to your questions. We'll get as many in as we can. Linda, Nate, you teased a couple days ago that there's a very heart-wrenching call coming up. I know you won't say who, but will you say when it's coming? I don't know. Stay tuned. Nate, what are you doing to take care of your mental health? You've been involved in this case since Hawaii. That's a good question. I should be doing more. I need to get into a therapist, probably. No, I of course have a great family and a great wife who's understanding, and I like to, go on little trips with my family. We have one planned when the trial is over. I find too that I've got good friends that work in the news industry, and so I'm able to call and talk with them. But yeah, I probably should do something when it's all done, right? Just to talk about it and get it taken care of. I need to get a hobby. News is my hobby, though. I'm too impatient for golf. Maybe I need to fish, although I'm pretty impatient for that, too. While following this case, we're just finding out about 7 questions with Emmy. Can you tell us more? Yes, I got a few questions about this. So Emmy is my daughter. She's now 9. When she was 7, she started a series called 7 Questions with Emmy, and it's turned into a weekly feature. And so every week she has a different interview. And today's Thursday. So Every Thursday, we post those on her page. You can go follow her, 7 Questions with Emmy. Today, she interviewed Georgetown Cupcake in Washington, D.C. We went into their bakery, obviously before the trial, and their cupcakes are known around the world. They're delicious cupcakes. And like Oprah gets their cupcakes, and Beyonce and the president, and they let Emmy frost cupcakes. It was 2 sisters that started it. So anyway, she just tries to ask questions. She's a very curious girl, and we post them every week, so it's kind of fun. I guess maybe she can come on as a guest here one day. We'll see. Natalie says, myself and some others who have been very into the Daybell trial are wondering if the jury can override the death penalty now that they've seen all the evidence. No, they cannot. The judge has taken death penalty off the table, so it's out. It is still on the table for Chad, though. The jury will not determine the sentence either. The Judge Boyce will. So the jury will come back with a verdict. Judge Boyce will then set a sentencing date, and then we'll know what she's sentenced for. Ashley, Nate, who on earth is James and Thor? I've been following this since the beginning, and this is the first time I'm hearing their names. I'm so confused. Okay, so I believe you're talking about James the Lesser. This was brought up in Zulema's testimony about an apostle in the scriptures who Chad believed he should follow James the Lesser. I think that's who you're talking about. Thor was part of the group that recorded podcasts with Lori and Melanie Gibb. He was kind of in the group. I don't recall a James being in the group, though. But yes, Thor was in the group. Speaking of lifesaver fetishes, what's your all-time favorite candy? This morning, the bailiff, every day you're in court, those of you who have been know, we're given strict instructions before it starts by the bailiff. Young bailiff, he says, you need to keep your phones down. Don't go like this. Keep them down. They need to be off. The second they go off, we'll take your phone. And then he said, also, there's been an issue with crinkling candy lately. If you have a lifesaver fetish, open all your lifesavers now so there's no crinkling. So I put that on my updates. My all-time favorite candy, man, I love candy. Lately, I've been eating Smarties in the afternoon in court. Don't tell the bailiff. I promise I unwrap them all at once and just like eat one at a time. But I go in phases. Sometimes it's chocolate. Right now it's Smarties. Amy asked, do you think Chad's house should still be a crime scene? I still feel like there's a lot of evidence there. Well, they've seized a lot of evidence, and apparently they have enough to take a case to trial. So I don't know of something that's a crime scene for 4 years now. You look at the University of Idaho case, too, and they're going to tear down that house. I think that's been cleared. So I think that they have what they need for evidence from the home. If someone has information that may be relevant, is it too late to say something? No way. Say something. In fact, there's often trials where the prosecutor will say, Your Honor, we've just learned something last night, or a witness came forward, or this or that, and it can change. So yes, if you know something, go to the police, then call me. Carol, have you ever had Chad or Lori look you in the eye? How did that feel? I don't think so. Lori and I have had eye contact. Not for long. She smiled at me when she comes into court before, and it's never longer than a second or two. And I'd love to have eye contact with them and interview them or chat with them. Why would Lori have brought JJ and Tylee's birth certificate to Hawaii? When I travel, I certainly don't bring my kids' paperwork along. Well, you know, there was a lot of money transactions going on and money being moved around here and there and accounts opened here and there. So it probably had something to do with that. Often if you want to do banking, and Tylee was almost 18, you need to prove, have a social security card or a passport or something. So that's probably why. If Lori is found guilty, can she ask for death versus life in prison? Nope, death is off the table. Amanda, has the prosecution showed the jury the video of Lori coming home after dropping off JJ at school? Good question. They have not. They have not shown that. And I'm sure they will, but they haven't to this point, and a lot of the Arizona officers have been called. Maybe because it's an Arizona case they haven't. I'm not sure, though. They have not seen that, though. Does Lori get a computer with internet while in jail? She better not. I don't think she'd get the internet. I think she might get a computer. I know Chad has a computer to go through evidence. So she probably has that because there's so much evidence. They give it to her maybe with a hard drive or something and she can go through it. Who pays for witness travel and expenses? Antonia asked. Well, the state does because they're the state's witnesses. So it's interesting. Some of these witnesses flew in or drove in for 10 minutes, spent the night in a hotel, went on the stand for 10 minutes, then they were dismissed. But the state pays for that. How much was Tammy's life insurance for? I believe Dee Dee asked that. I believe it was one for $400,000. At least one policy. I'd have to go double check the numbers. Did Lori or Chad go to Alex's funeral? No, Merlene asks. Why wasn't Lori in shackles today? Angie asks. She has not been in leg shackles all week. I think that her attorneys probably were able to talk with the bailiff or the court or the judge, and he said that that's okay. She doesn't need to be there. But I have noticed that there's now 2 deputies that stand behind her. In the past, it was 1. So that may have increased. Do we know if a toxology screen was done on Alex? Yes, it was. It was, and so was an autopsy, and we published a story about that a year or 2 ago. If you go Google that or go to our website, you can probably find it, and that's where it said that he had the blood clots in his lungs. There we go, everybody. Day 13. Thank you for watching. No show tomorrow because there's no court tomorrow, but I'll be back Sunday night to give you a preview of what we can expect next week. And I do have to say that I just have to thank you all so much because you have really been supporting me and East Idaho News while I'm out here. And if you are watching Linda Whiteside and Shelley Vester in Austin, thank you very much for your kind emails. I appreciate that. All right, everybody, thank you for watching. I hope you have a good weekend. Courtroom Insider, keep the questions coming. We'll go through it, the testimonies on the East Idaho News YouTube page, and hopefully we'll have some news here soon from the trial, and I hope you have a good night.